Welcome to Never Again Is Now, a podcast about anti-Semitism. I'm Evelyn Marcus, and in addition to being a psychologist, I'm featured in the documentary about anti-Semitism called Never Again Is Now. I am a Dutch Jew and the daughter of Holocaust survivors. In 2006, I immigrated to the United States because of the rising anti-Semitism in Europe.
I am Phyllis Zimbler Miller, the founder of the free nonfiction Holocaust theater project, Thin Edge of the Wedge. It's also translated into German, but I won't try with my terrible German accent to say what the title is in Germany. I grew up in a small town in the Midwest, and my grandparents immigrated from Latvia and Russia at the turn of the 20th century. My US Army officer husband and I were stationed in Munich only 25 years after the end of World War II.
So our guest for today, we're honored to have him on the show, is Andrei Kovacs. He is located in Cologne in Germany, and he is the managing director of the Association of 1700 Years of Jewish Life in Germany. Andrei, welcome to our show. Could you please tell us a little bit more about you and your background?
Well, of course, first of all, thank you for having me. It's a great honor. I'm born in Romania. I grew up in Germany. I'm Jewish. And my grandparents were Jewish, and I'm also coming. My grandparents were also deported, survived the Holocaust. Actually, Hungarian, Romanian Jews. And my background, I grew up in Germany, but I studied in the Netherlands, and I studied in Great Britain, and then I lived for a while in Paris. So I have a little bit the European view on the subject of anti-Semitism as well. Yes, and via my CV, different jobs, also entrepreneurial endeavors, I ended up now being since 2 years, since 2019, as you said, the managing director of this association, in English called JLIT, as I learned, and I'm responsible actually for preparing and executing the festival here in Germany.
Great. Andrei, can you tell us a little bit more about the festival?
Yes, of course. The festival is actually a very simple idea. It's not very complicated. We are living here in Germany, in the country which invented and exported the Holocaust. And of course, people nowadays, now in the second, third, fourth generation, are very concerned about the past, many of them. And we are living very much in the past, in remembrance. And there is a certain, let's say, cold relationship between Jewish and non-Jewish people, which we find very often. Very frozen, because of course there is a lot of weight on the shoulders of non-Jewish people here in Germany, which is the vast majority. The second thing is we are living in a time where German Jews start to rise again, is a little bit too much, but it's gaining importance. If we imagine after the Second World War, very few Jews survived or stayed in Germany, very, very few. There was a certain immigration during the years after the Second World War, but it was 89, Tag der Deutschen Einheit, the Unity Day, when actually things changed and enabled then later on in 92, around 92, the government to allow Jews from the former Soviet Union to immigrate to Germany, as they call in German, the Kontingentflüchtlinge, so contingency plan, if you like. There was a certain law they implemented, and that allowed a lot of Jews, young Jews, old Jews, Jewish families to immigrate. So since 92, during the coming years, we experienced in Germany a growth of Jewish life, which is quite unique in Europe. In all the rest of Europe, it's quite a lot of tension. In Germany, it grew because the German government supported the raise of Jewish life again here in Germany with this contingency law. And nowadays we have around before 92, there were around maybe 27,000 Jews counted through the communities in Germany. Nowadays, we estimate around 150,000 Jews here. We have infrastructure, we have young people growing up, of course, like second generation after the immigration, if you like. So there's a kind of a new German Jewish spirit coming up in Germany. And the fact is that the German society was still in the modus of remembrance of the time before 89. And by the way, we have also the new countries here that didn't have so much time actually to work on the past in Eastern Germany. So it's a quite special situation here in Germany. So this year, actually, our goal is to change the perspective.
Yes, your goal is to change the perspective of Germans
exactly.
on Jews.
From looking at the past, also looking into the future, because we have a lot of new young Jewish people growing up here, and they want to think about the future as well, not only about the past.
Right. Could you briefly tell us about what the festival is doing, but briefly, please, because of the time constraint we have?
We are funded actually by the German government and others, and we got the opportunity to organize events together with partners in entire Germany. So basically, we organize our own events, but we have a lot of partners as well. And there's around 2,000 events happening now in entire Germany, in all the 16 countries in Germany, within Germany, with a lot of partners that are organizing that.
Describe an event. What is an event looking like?
It's very wide. So we have discussion forums, we have concerts, we have art events, artists working with us. We have the churches are getting involved, politics is getting involved. There's all sorts of different.
Yes, but what does it look like?
Can you give us one example of an event?
Okay, one example, which is also coming from New York, is the Leo Baeck Institute, for example. They have an exposition that is online, 1,007 years of Jewish life in German-speaking lands, that you can access also via internet. It's a great exposition. We have also live expositions, of course, in the Jewish Museum here in Cologne, for example, as well, 1,700 years, where they have a medieval quarter that they are digging out. We have big concerts. We have art exhibitions throughout Germany. And a lot of Jewish communities are doing, for example, Sukkot XXL. We have also the projects that we do in network with others. So we want to celebrate the biggest Sukkot party in the world in Germany, with the goal actually to work on the stereotypes and to show Jewish life is not a myth and it's not something bizarre that we are doing behind closed walls. But actually, Sukkot, the idea is to invite friends. It's also written, you invite friends, you celebrate together, you drink, you laugh, you enjoy yourself. And this is what we want to transport to a very wide range of people on a very low level, if possible. So we reach many people in the country, for example.
I think I read you invite Jews and non-Jews to buy a sukkah, right? And to build a sukkah and celebrate Sukkot. Is that correct?
That's correct. Actually, we have an architect that is doing a kind of a painting that is also, German law is sometimes very strict, so it has to be stable and this and that. So he's doing a kind of a painting, and then everybody can actually go to the market, buy wood and whatever, and build the sukkah themselves. And we invite Jews and non-Jews to do so. And then at the end, we'll select the coolest sukkah in Germany.
Very nice, very original. Andrei, have you or others you know recently faced any anti-Semitism?
That's a very difficult question, because the definition of anti-Semitism is a very difficult one for me. So I started to read into that 2 years ago. Of course, you have a lot of theory around it. What does it mean? What doesn't it mean? I would say, like in recent years, and also within my work, if we expect the internet, if we take the internet out of the count. So in general, I was quite lucky that I did not experience anti-Semitism in the surrounding. However, of course, the anti-Zionism that we discuss, that is a tool for anti-Semitism, as we know, this I experienced, and it's a very, very, very thin line, actually, that I experience very often, where I'm saying, is it anti-Semitic, or is it simply a political view? And it's a very difficult one to assess. But there was nobody coming to me and say bad words that I'm Jewish directly.
Could you give us an example of what you have recently experienced in terms of anti-Zionism?
Well, I think, yes, I think I experienced quite a lot because I'm in discussion with a lot of entities. And of course, we have a big fraction that respect that Israel has a very special status. And if we talk about anti-Zionism, that means you don't want the Jewish state to exist, simply, right? So basically, this is something I very seldomly hear. But of course, the comparisons that are driven in the recent years, that you see also in literature among intellectuals, that the political system or the acting of Israel is comparable with South Africa in the past, apartheid, you say also in English, I think.
Yeah.
This is a line which is, I think, not anymore acceptable. I mean, we have enough definitions for telling us what it is not, anti-Semitism, and I think broadly everybody agrees. But this is discussions I very often have. And if I say to somebody, we want to talk to do something against anti-Semitism in Germany, I sometimes get the answer, yes, but we have to be allowed to say our opinion. When I'm saying, you want to say your opinion about anti-Semitism, or you want to say your opinion about something that is actually not linked to anti-Semitism per se, which is the subject of politics in Israel. So I go there and talk about in this case, the German or European society and the challenges that we have with the rising anti-Semitism. And I get it as an answer, yes, but we have to be allowed to say our opinion. And this I hear quite often, to be honest, also from entities that are actually in the educational ground. So actually where I'm asking myself, what is the problem? How can that be?
Right. I think that so the definition that was adopted by the European Union, by the United States, by the United Nations, the definition of anti-Semitism is that it can also be in the form of demonizing the Jewish state, or denying the existence of a Jewish state, denying the rightful existence of a Jewish state, so delegitimizing anti-Zionism. It is actually, that is considered anti-Semitic in the definition that is now internationally in international community was adopted. And there is a debate about that. Will it not too much stifle any discussion or debate about the policies of the state of Israel, right? Of the government of Israel. So I think what the international community put as a line is that as long as you debate the policies of Israel, it's not anti-Semitic. But if you start to deny the right to exist of Israel, then it's considered anti-Semitic, because the Jewish people have, like other people, the right to self-determination in their homeland, in their ancestral homeland. So that's where the line usually is drawn. And I can understand that it's confusing for certain people, and some people don't even accept it. Have you debated anti-Zionism directly with people who were raising questions about the right to exist of Israel?
I have to admit that in my function, there is not many that tell me that they are of the opinion that Israel should be rejected, the right of existence for Israel should be denied. So this is something I didn't experience directly as such in a debate. And if I do the debate, I have, of course, the challenge. I need to actually involve as many people as possible into the goals of the festival year. And I make very quickly clear that Israeli politics is not part of fighting anti-Semitism in Germany. Why? Because actually the problem, the anti-Zionism is a way how to express anti-Semitism.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, this is my opinion. So basically, the actual problem is, if we are looking, there's also studies about that of the World Jewish Congress, for example. They asked a lot of people, what do they think about Jews? And for example, 22% of the people said that they don't like Jews because of their behavior. 22%. Now that means, if we think about this, every fifth person that I'm meeting on the street as a Jew has in his head that I hate this guy, if he knows that I'm Jewish, because he's Jewish. I don't like his expressions, his behavior. And there is another study of the European Agency for Fundamental Rights, I think they're called, for example. They said, for example, 11% of Germans, they say that Jews are not able and will never be able to integrate into society. I hope this is the correct wording that I'm using. Now, this is a problem. Now, if they express this in anti-Zionism, or if they express anti-Semitism in another way, that's for me a secondary thing, because actually the problem is that this is what they have in their head. This is what they inherited by the parents. This is how they grew up. And somehow this kind of stereotypes and this Semitic feelings are still in their blood. And that is actually the big challenge, not even to actually change that, but to avoid that they are infecting like a virus. I always compare like anti-Semitism with a mutating virus, that they infect others. So actually to find a way how to avoid that. And this is where we always, and I try to concentrate on, rather, than to discuss with Semites about anti-Semitism. It's, for me, it's like, I never met an anti-Semite that changed his or her mind. Never happened.
And yet, to go to Holocaust education in Germany, which we've spoken about before, I mean, they're taught in school that the ideology of the Nazis in the 30s led to the murder of 6 million Jewish men, women, and children, and millions of Roma, homosexuals, political dissidents, Jehovah's Witnesses, et cetera, et cetera. How in Germany do they understand that and yet continue to be anti-Semitic?
I think this is two phenomena. So basically, one phenomena, this is my perspective on things after reading a lot about the subject. The Holocaust as such is a phenomena. I think all the world is interested in that. How the hell can something like this happen? The biggest genocide in human mankind. This is something, and it happened recently. It's 76 years ago, nothing. It's yesterday. So that's something that is fascinating everybody. The problem that we have is the anti-Semitism is not invented in the Holocaust. And so I think in Germany, to come back to your question, people often mix these two things. I think there's one thing, which is Holocaust education, which is extremely important. And they do here in Germany, I have to say, they do very, very much about this. And there's a lot of recent discussions about schools, how you teach the Holocaust in schools. I think what is missing there a little bit is a kind of a European benchmark, maybe, or worldwide benchmark, even taking into account that the Holocaust was invented in Germany, but still, I think what I heard about the Netherlands, for example, or the UK or the US, like all schools teach the Holocaust as this kind of terrible momentum to learn also about democracy, pluralism, and to make sure that this doesn't happen in another context too. But there is the subject of anti-Semitism, and they don't talk about it a lot. So basically, it's a very abstract thing because there is not so many Jews. I always say it's you are rather hit by a blizzard than to meet a Jew on the street here in Germany. So basically, you don't have a living example. It's very seldom, here in Germany, that 3 Jews discuss. I mean, it must be artificial. You cannot simply go into a cafe and meet. It's not such an open culture here, also from the Jewish side. So I think you need. What is not done enough in Germany is working on an empathy side. And I think we talked about it, Phyllis. So basically, it's a lot of theory. They are doing quite a lot about Holocaust education. It's a lot done, and there's a lot of politics that's very, very pro. I think right now there is a rising anti-Semitism, yes, but there is also a big part of the society that starts to fight, to resist against that, which is a very, very important and nice sign. But on the other hand, we tend to forget that there is living examples of Jews living here as well, who still want to be respected. And it's not a theory, it is, we are alive. Yes, and this is something, and only if you respect that you have an alive example next to you, if you know your neighbor, you get to know your neighbor, and you're not looking at him like that, or visit his empty living room, like for example, your synagogues, or if you go to a deportation camp, which is all very important, but having a beer together, that solves a lot of problems where you don't need to read like 2,000 pages about anti-Semitism or Holocaust. Sometimes it's enough to say cheers, and then a lot of problems are solved. And this is, I think, what is not done enough here. It's a very, this is why I said sometimes the relationship is very stiff. It's not loose. Like in the US very often, even though I know that in the US there's also problems with raising anti-Semitism in some parts. But I think we have to do a lot of work here in Germany and in Europe to achieve a status like in the US.
So, Andrei, you mentioned your project of showing 1700 years of Jewish life in Germany, basically saying probably that Jews are integrated in Germany instead of the prejudice that they are not. I also hear you saying it would help if we would, socialize as Jews with non-Jews to take away prejudices and see us in a very narrow-minded way. We have in Germany, we have anti-Semitism coming from growing in a growing way from the far right, from the extreme right. We have it coming from the left, and then it's anti-Zionism. And we have it from a big Muslim immigrant community that takes its anti-Semitism from their homelands and has it a lot also in their religion. Would drinking beers and showing 1700 years of Jewish life, integrated Jewish life in Germany, would it have an effect on all those three anti-Semit sides where anti-Semitism comes from, or is it different? Or do we need to do more to stop all three?
It's a good question. I mean, it's I never said that it will solve a problem, but and we don't know if it has an effect empirically because we are not yet at the end. But what I can say is, I mean, if we are talking about these three kinds of radicalism, I mean, first of all, I don't like actually to put that into left or right or center or up or down, or Muslim or non-Muslim, because actually the problem that we have is coming from everywhere. It's like a virus. Of course, there's some other background from the Muslim community, which you need to tackle differently, that is coming to Germany. We recently saw it in the event in Germany. It is different from the right, as you said. Maybe even a little bit dangerous because the right wings might use the subject as well for own political purposes, Jewish life in Germany and tradition and so on, to exclude other parts of the society. And we have the left, as you said. The fundamental problem for me is that it's coming from everywhere, and that we, until now, in the past 76 years, if we talk about raising anti-Semitism, the question is, do we have anything else? Is there something better? We tried so many things, and here in Germany, I can say, I mean, I went into into what was done. There was a lot of stuff happening, and of course, a lot can be still done, but still 76 years of work, and yet again, we're in the same situation that anti-Semitism is rising. So why not trying something new? And I think there's one thing that is missing, and this is like a kind of the question, where is stereotyping come from? And stereotyping comes from the fact that you don't know people, you never met somebody, and you are told that he has a long nose, that he had payas, that he has a kippah on the head. And by the way, you will see every second picture of Jews in Germany is with a kippah from the behind on the head, that they are not, they have closed doors. They go every week into the synagogue. They're all eating kosher, all these kind of things. But what you don't know is the truth. So, and this raises stereotyping, and this raises, anti-Semitism. And I think empathy might solve some of the issues. We don't know if it will work, but let's give it a try.
What do you mean by empathy? What does that look like, for instance? Is that the beer, drinking the beer together?
Well, maybe also having, looking somebody in the eye, if Corona allows, of course, even if it's with a lot of distance, but looking into the eye, telling a joke, and understanding that this other person is a simple human being and not some mysterium from the history book. I think this is what I'm feeling for the person.
Okay, what I'm thinking about is the 1930s in Germany. That was actually the situation in Germany. German Jews had non-Jewish German friends. They knew each other very well, but a lot of the non-Jewish German friends turned against their Jewish friends. So even though they knew them well, so how does that fit in?
Can I just intersect there? We have to remember that it was a huge, huge propaganda campaign to turn non-Jews in Germany against their Jewish neighbors, which hopefully is not going to happen in Germany.
Well, we are seeing a huge propaganda campaign against Israel as a demon state, the demon Jewish state. So my worry is there is this propaganda developing that lands on all kinds of fertile ground. So I have that worry. But what you're saying, Andrei, is I think very valuable. I think in general, prejudices diminish in general, right? They diminish somewhat from knowing each other better. And so socializing could definitely not hurt, and it will probably help in certain instances. And also your project of showing 1700 years of Jewish life in Germany, hopefully will change in certain people's mind, or in some people's mind, or hopefully in a lot of people's mind, the idea that Jews are strangers in Germany. They're not. They lived there for 1700 years. So, no one of us can stop anti-Semitism on our own, or with our own one project, or as a government alone. We can't. We have to do it together. We find it extremely important that every individual who cares about stopping anti-Semitism does something to help. And so I would like to stress to our listeners that what we can learn from you, Andrei, is that we can socialize more with people who are not Jewish, and we can tell people about how long we already live in the country where we live. We all can do that individually to somebody who may not know so much about Jewish life, so that we can, as individuals, I think, learn from you to help to stop anti-Semitism.
And I'd just like to say one thing, and then give Andrei a chance to say his last thoughts. When the Jewish holiday book that I co-authored with Rabbi Karen Fox in 1992, Seasons for Celebration, the editor of it was published by a traditional publisher. She wanted us to use clip art of rabbis, of Jews with payasses, and we said, no, we're not going to do that. She said, well, I'm not giving you any money. So we hired someone to make pictures of Sukkot and I don't think that was brave of us, but that's an example how all of us can have an influence, because people still buy this book, believe it or not, because it is good. And the pictures there are encouraging and not oppressive. So when you talked about that, those are the little things that we can all think about. The portrayal of Jews, and not just automatically saying, oh yeah, that's a good idea, just use the clip art. So now you get your last chance of saying anything really important before our wonderful interview with you is over.
Yeah, well, maybe my last word, because I was thinking about what you, Evelyn, said, and you, Phyllis, as well. I think empathy is important because there is no such a thing like Jews as a block, as there is, to be honest, not such a thing as Germans, because 20% of Germans are immigrants nowadays, or have an immigration background, by the way, as there is no such a thing than Americans. America, Germany is actually a concept for me. And we have to accept that every person is different, and we are living with multi-identities somewhere. And for this, to understand that, you have to know the people. You cannot simply have stereotypes or concepts of a group of people. I think this is not very helpful, because you will find that this will lead to nowhere. So basically, I hope that this kind of empathy and this understanding that it's important to get to know somebody, and as you said, Evelyn, that changes then the stereotyping maybe, behind that is also that we are all different. It sounds a little bit, maybe stupid, but this is the fact. Every individual is different, and I never found a Jew that he's like the other one, as I never found a German that he's like or she's like another one. And I don't find a lot of German culture that is not influenced by immigration or other countries. So we are living actually in a melting pot in the entire world, in my point of view. And this is, I think, what we need to understand, and maybe that's the way to fight anti-Semitism in the future.
Thank you, Andrei, so much. You've given us so much to think about. And I thank the listeners for listening in. Do check out Evelyn's documentary, Never Again Is Now, on YouTube or on her website, which is joinneveragainisnow.com. And you can learn about my nonfiction Holocaust theater play at thinedgethewedge.com. And whenever you can, without endangering yourself physically, speak up against anti-Semitism and hate. Thank you.